Hello friends, my name is Abhay Kumar and today I am going to talk about Uniform Civil Code and several issues related to the identity of Muslims community, the rise of Hindutva and several other challenges. With me, Professor Arshad Alam, who has earlier taught at Jawaharlal Nehru University at the Department of Sociology, is joining. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Abhay. Thank you.
And I want to introduce my guest. Professor Arshad Alam has done his PhD from JNU at Education Department, and his PhD thesis was titled "The Reproductions of Islamic Education," a study of two madrasas of Mubarakpur in Uttar Pradesh. And his PhD was also later developed into a book on madrasa. It was published by Routledge in 2011. Earlier, he has also taught at Jawaharlal Nehru Center at Jamia Millia Islamia. His study has been done in sociology from JNU and Aligarh Muslim University. He has written several articles in reputed and world-class journals, including Economic and Political Weekly, Journals of Muslims Minority and Affairs, and the Great Modern Asian Studies, Islam and Muslim Society. His articles have been included in several volumes edited by well-known scholars of Islam and Muslim politics, including Jamal Malik, Professor Musirul Hassan, Tahir Mahmood, and others. So I will not take much time, and I'll ask questions about Uniform Civil Code. Friends, you know it very well that recently Delhi High Court has made an observations in a case that government should go for implementing Uniform Civil Code, and that has been a long issue. It has been controversial. The court has made such or similar remarks several times, and the Hindutva forces have also made Uniform Civil Code at its pet agenda since 1980s. In 2019 manifesto of the BJP, Uniform Civil Code found important place. Many scholars are saying that the government has no blueprint and it is only doing politics. So we will ask Professor Arshad Alam, who is known for his view, very different view, radical view. He looks at things from from subaltern perspective. He is critique of both Hindutva forces and other things which is also part of the community, which many people would not like to speak because of sounding politically correct. Sir, thank you very much. I think it is going to be a very important and very fruitful discussion. The first question, Uniform Civil Code is being talked about, and now Hindutva forces are saying that Muslims are opposing it because they want to keep more wives and more children. They are hurdle in the path of the development and nations building. So will you oppose it or will you support it? What is your view?
I will first of all ask for a blueprint. All right. So the debate on Uniform Civil Code till now has been happening in a vacuum. So whenever the state says that there is a need for a Uniform Civil Code, till now we have not seen a blueprint on which we need to talk about. Yeah, that is the first thing. Number two, there are questions vis-a-vis the diversity of this country, which any blueprint, if the state is coming up with a blueprint, has to negotiate. Yeah. So although it is projected as a Hindu-Muslim question, and you very rightly said that it has become some kind of a beating stick with which you tend to haunt Muslims, but the diversity within the what are called Hindus itself is very mind-boggling. Yeah. So we are not just talking of diversity in terms of regions, but also diversity of lifestyles owing to different castes, owing to different tribal communities, and owing to different religious orientations within Hinduism itself. Yes. So that is number one. So will And then the question of Muslims come, and then the question of other religious minorities come. Now, I completely agree, although this is also debatable whether, because the argument is that for a nation state you need a uniform civil code. Yeah. For the development of a country, there has to be one common law which should govern the entire country. What are the objective evidence behind this assertion? Yeah. So, for example, the US federal structure, if you see, where every state has its own constitution, and different laws exist, interpretations of laws are different in different states. Is it not progressing? Is there a secessionist movement there? Or is some state saying that because we have a different law, we do not want to integrate in the American salad bowl? Is there a similar sentiment in Switzerland, where the cantons have very, very differential laws, very different laws? So, in terms of the assertion that this is a necessity, a uniform civil code is a necessity because we need to develop, I do not think there is any factual basis on that. But still,
it's just a claim.
It's just a claim, which needs to be verified. Yeah. But still, if in this case the call has come from the High Court, but certainly it is a matter for the Parliament to decide. The law has to come from there. So the executive better give us a blueprint if they are really serious about it. Because my personal opinion is that, you see, even the Law Commission in 2018 said that it is neither necessary nor desirable. Yeah. But if the government is really serious, let it come with a blueprint. Let all communities, including communities within the broader Hindu community, debate with it. And see where we proceed from there. We are a huge country. If and when the blueprint comes, it's going to take time, and there should be a very, very wider consultation about it.
So, if I summarize your view, you are saying that once blueprint is out in public domain, then one could read and one could comment.
Exactly.
Now everything is being talked about in air, and petty politics is going on.
Yes, exactly.
Sir, on the questions of reform,
because concretely we do not have anything on which we can have a substantive debate.
Okay. Yeah. So the responsibility is with the executive, the political executive.
It's with the government. Yes.
It's with the government. Sir, on the questions of reforms, I think there is multiple views. The Muslims community, particularly the elites among the Muslims community, the religious and social groups, they are saying that the state has no business to interfere in the culture and the religious matter of the minority community. On the other hand, some people argue, particularly those from, let's say, Hindutva forces or a section of left also, that a state has power to intervene or to go for some kind of a reforms. So what will be your position? Should a state intervene, or should reform happen within the society? And in case if reform is not happening, if the community is not willing to, then what is the way out?
This is a very difficult and complicated question. Let me see how I can...
No, what you think?
Yeah,
it is more important.
Answer it. There is no denying the fact that there is need of reform within the Muslim community.
Reform is needed in Muslim community.
Yes, there is absolutely no ground for debate.
Okay.
I'm saying there is an absolute need that reform of religious laws must happen within the Muslim community.
So what are the domains where you would like to suggest some reforms?
See, in terms of civil code, because the criminal code is the same for everybody. In terms of civil code, even, I mean, two important things that we talk about and both of them are related to women. It's about marriage, divorce, succession. So these three things are important.
Management of religious institutions, charity.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it will all come under inheritance. Waqf definitely is a important topic, but you see the general impression that when you talk of uniform civil code, yeah, is that the Muslims are allowed to marry these many times. Yeah, they are allowed to have more than one wife.
But how many of them are doing it?
So empirically, whether that is happening or not, in fact, one study actually says that instance of polygamy is more among the Hindus.
Yes, 1974 report.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's not, because there is a huge gulf between what is the objective reality and what is the perception. Yeah, and perception, politics, is basically a game of perception. Yeah. So if the reigning hegemonic idea is that Muslims are polygamous, because Islam and the religious code that they prescribe permits that.
But there are also conditions, sir.
Well, I have my own views regarding that, but let's not get into that.
Okay.
So I am saying absolutely that there is a need
for
reforms within the Muslim personal law.
But can Mediterranean state do reforms in? Is it legitimate to do reforms in minority culture and religion?
I don't know if the way you are framing the question is correct.
Okay.
Because of course it is the state which will be doing it.
No, because I read a piece, I read this statement by, let's say, Deobandi school. They keep referring to, I think, in 1930s or something, the Madani agreement, that they will support majority government led by, let's say, Hindus. But now the Mediterranean state has to give the government based on majority votes. Definitely they are Hindus. They have to protect the sanctity of the cultural and religious rights of the Muslims. So it should not intervene in their private domain. So how far I am correct?
That you are absolutely correct, and that seems to be the intent between the Muslim religious elite and the Indian government or the Indian state. Yeah. So Nehru obviously could muster the courage to reform, bring changes in the Hindu Code Bill. But on the question of Muslim reform, he was completely silent. Yeah. And the argument that we have been hearing is that let those voices come from within.
Yes.
All right. Now, I just want to flag one or two things.
Okay.
So for the last 70 years, we actually have been waiting for that voice to come. Yeah? And I'm not saying that the voice has not come. The voice has come, but yet there is no recognition of that voice. So for example...
So are you saying that the state is more willing to hear the voice of the religious conservative elites than the progressive sections of the community?
No, exactly. That's what has been happening. Because there is a particular idea of the Muslim community. Who is the Muslim? Yeah? So with my sartoriality and my presence, I do not represent the Muslim community. That is the understanding. Yeah? So who represents the Muslim community? It's Deoband, it's Barelvis, it's All India Muslim Personal Law Board. Yeah? Who have very, very close relationship with the state, obviously. It's primarily because the state has a particular way of looking at Muslims. Yeah? And that is that Muslims are primarily religious entities. So it's not just the clerics who are looking at the Muslim community sans the questions of caste and gender or regional diversity, but it's also the state which is primarily interested only in your religious identity.
Okay.
And therefore the representative of that identity are the ulama. Yeah? and therefore it is more interested in talking to the ulama. Yeah, I'm saying in the last 70-80 years, because of the peculiar structure within the Muslim community, where you definitely have a very small modernist elite, which gets co-opted by different political parties and therefore becomes silent after being co-opted. Yeah. So take for example somebody like Salman Khurshid, yeah, very highly educated politician, but will be completely mum when it comes to reforms within the Muslim community on the question of marriage and divorce, and
gender and
succession.
caste.
Yeah, he will be completely silent. Yeah. So then, is he representing the voice of the community, or is he representing the ideology of the Congress party, which tells him to remain silent on the issue? Yeah. Number two, what I want to flag, how do you look at, for example, a movement, an organic movement of Muslim women, like the Bharatiya Muslim Mahila Andolan, and these are very, very intelligent, age-old activists who have been working there and who have been demanding reforms in the Muslim personal law, not now, but for the last 20 years at least, I have been tracking their activism.
So the secular parties have paid no attention.
Secular parties have not paid no attention, and to tell them that they are BJP agents does not work.
That's okay.
Because their politics predates the BJP coming to power.
Okay.
It's just that the secular parties were never interested in talking to them. Yeah? This distrust of the modernist Muslim.
आपसे वोट नहीं मिलेगा.
Yeah, it's not just that, it is the distrust.
That you will not be able to fetch votes.
I don't know whether it is only about votes. I think I might say something very controversial, so I'll
No, you please. No, you
skip it.
Speak.
So there is a distrust.
Distrust. Okay.
And the Indian state, whichever government, be it BJP, be it Congress,
Or left.
they have been very, very comfortable with the ulama. Yeah? And this is what Gandhiji's legacy is to us. Yeah? Because Gandhiji was extremely nervous when it came to handle the modernist Muslim.
Okay. And he was more comfortable with Deobandi school. Yes.
And therefore you have the Khilafat, and therefore you have Madani writing, composite nationalism, and and of course you had a wonderful compact between Congress and the Khilafat committee, which was at one level, I don't know how to describe it, because Muslims were fighting for the caliphate in Turkey, which was an external thing, and Hindus under the Congress were fighting, doing non-cooperation. So I don't know what kind of an understanding
and cow
was
protection
that.
was also one of the issue in
Yes.
the Khilafat movement, and the Muslim agreed.
They did, because the religious issue was the larger issue at that time. Yeah. So I'll not go into it because even that idea of composite nationalism, how composite was that is also a question, and I've written somewhere that we need to relook what Madani basically said. Whether the state should intervene. Now here comes the difficult part. Yeah, because the state is not a neutral entity. Yeah, states are run by governments. Governments have political ideologies, and particularly with the BJP coming to power, there is lot of anxiety within the Muslim community. Yeah, they feel that they have been besieged, and that this government is going to tamper with their identity, particularly their religious identity. In such a situation, should the government intervene? And what will be the reaction from the community? On the other hand, I have no final answers. On the other hand, if you say that the government should not intervene, but that the community itself should come forward and make reforms in their religious laws. I'm really very doubtful that it is going to happen given the structure of power and authority within the Muslim community. Yeah. So then what is the way out? Should it be the state? You see, I think a bit differently because every action by the state, you see, there has to be some kind of an understanding. Yeah? If the modern Indian state is really interested in the development of the Muslim community and if it is really wanting a change. Yeah? Although that is a very large assumption and I do not think it is really interested. But you look at Raja Ram Mohan Roy, for example, go back to those times. If he was not supported by the British colonial state, what kind of support Raja Ram Mohan Roy had? I mean, we read about Bengal Renaissance in our textbooks, but we know what was the social basis of that Renaissance. It was just 1,000 people, maybe even less. But ultimately, why it became effective is because it got the support of the colonial state. Yeah? Any modernist voice, if it does not get the support of the state, will not succeed.
But is a state interested in doing reforms?
As I said, I am making a very, very large assumption here.
The Britishers also were not much interested in reforms. They were more interested in doing their own business, earning profits, maintaining their rule.
They were definitely interested in earning profits.
Arresting their...
But along the way, which of course was influenced a lot by Christian ideas.
Some argue that Brahmanism has become even more stronger after the coming of the British rule.
In what sense?
They have argued that the modern institutions has created opportunities and that opportunities were monopolized by the Brahmins and it was some kind of all India associations that was formed and then they also replaced the voices of Dalits and Bahujan.
No, they did not, because the Dalits and Bahujans did not have a voice. Dalits and Bahujans had a voice for the first time under the British colonial state. Let's not forget that.
Okay.
Dalits and Bahujans did not or were not allowed to go to school in pre-colonial times. Let us reiterate this point if people have forgotten it. Yeah. So of course, through the translation of Vedas and Smritis and all that, Brahmins got a new lease of life, but there were other social forces that were also unleashed. And Ambedkar and Phule and all those kind of mobilizations, Periyar, they are a product of that churning also.
Okay.
And you cannot discount the contribution of colonialism or the colonial context. Their push towards education, particularly elementary education, in that social churning. Yeah? So to argue that the British colonial state only strengthened Brahmanism, I mean, I do not know from where this is coming from.
Lucius has argued at one place that when the Orientalists were there, the Brahmins were more comfortable, and after that, when what should we say that the new group of intellectuals of British state, those who were utilitarians, when they came and when they started about doing some reforms, in opposition to that reforms, in opposition to that new social forces, we are more interested in reforms and giving more voice to Dalits and Bahujan. That time the Indian nationalism came. So in his Aloysius reading, what I have understood, that the Indian nationalism was basically a counterproductive move to close some kind of opportunities which were given to the marginalized sections.
Yeah, that can be a perspective. So the basic argument is that nationalism has to be seen as a counter mobilization against the Dalit Bahujans.
Yes.
And I am saying that the mobilization of Dalit Bahujan itself was occasioned by the context of the colonial state.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay. So you were saying,
yeah.
Coming back to the point, you were saying that the voice of the modernist Muslims among the community needs some sort of a support from the state.
It does. Without that, it's not possible. It is either possible in a situation where the voices of the modernist Muslims become the hegemonic voices or become the common sense of Muslims, which is, I do not see when this will happen, which is a very difficult thing, not just in India, but across the Islamic world. And I know I'm making a very controversial point. So some kind of a support from the state, very, very necessary. And therefore, there has to be alignment between modernist, liberal, progressive voices within the community and the Indian state.
Okay. So
now, whether the Indian state is genuinely interested in reform or not is an altogether different question.
But it is turning more and more authoritarian and communal and anti-Muslim.
Definitely. So that's why I'm saying I'm making a large assumption in believing that it might be interested. Yeah. But objectively speaking, it doesn't look like.
Okay. So
and that's why in front, right in the very beginning, I said that it has become like UCC has become like a beating stick. You know?
Okay. So the questions remains unanswered. What is the way out?
No, as I said, I will not have a final answer to this.
Okay. But you are talking about different angles and the problems associated with it.
Yeah, I am saying it cannot come from the clerics.
Okay. Number one point.
Because they are interested in the status quo.
Okay.
And I will not say they are also they are interested in Islam also.
They are not interested in Islam.
They are not even interested in that.
Very controversial statement.
Yeah, because...
Sir, you are making a very controversial statement.
I know that. And anyway, that's a separate point. But Islam gave property rights to women.
Okay.
All right?
Okay, yes.
Property rights mean property rights. It gave share in land, everything. If you see the 1937 Shariat Act,
yes,
agricultural land is exempt from daughters' inheritance or women. Women cannot inherit agricultural land. Now, what kind of Islam are you protecting?
Okay.
That position continues till date.
Okay.
तो अगर आपको इस्लाम की इतनी चिंता है तो पहले ये तो सुधार लो जो इस्लाम बोल रहा है आपको करने के लिए. पहले उतना तो कर लो भाई. हाँ? So if you are this champion, this custodian of Islam, why don't you implement what Islam is telling you to do? Why have you divested lakhs of women from their genuine share, legitimate share in ancestral property? उसके बाद आप बोलिए भाई कि our Islam is perfect and we want to preserve it like that.
Okay. So you are saying that within the scope, within the ambit of Islam, the progressive elements, even the community leaders are not willing to implement this because of their own interest. Maybe the...
No, of course.
Yes. So you talked about the Sharia Act 1937. So now the next question is related to personal law of Muslims. All India Muslim Personal Law Board, that is a group of Muslim organizations formed in 1972-73. That is seen as one of the major Muslim organizations. It says that it is only the authentic voice among the Muslims. So what is your take on that? Because in last 4 or 5 years, it has been again in news. We know it. It was in news in Sahabano case also in 1980s. But when this new government, Hindutva government came, after 2014 or 15 or 16, they fought the case of, what should I say, triple talaq. They were also associated with Babri Masjid case. And now, at least I can say that there are two kinds of the voices among the Muslims, at least two. One says that it is only authentic soul voice. But now there is also another voice emerging which says that the All India Muslim Personal Law Board has failed to guide the Muslims community, to defend its legitimate rights. And even one lawyer has said that even in Babri Masjid case, the lawyer which were arguing the case of the Babri Masjid, that person was not qualified enough to defend the case. So your take on All India Muslim Personal Law Board?
Jilani Sahab is no more.
Yes.
So he was associated with the board for a very long time and he's passed away. So, but I mean, we all know the context in which the Supreme Court passed the judgment, who was the judge, what was his role in NRC in Assam. We know all that. What happened after he retired, we know that also.
No, but we should not talk about individual person. I'm talking about the board, its role, its contribution.
No.
How do you evaluate it?
So, just singling out
Yes.
Faryab Jilani, that the board lost the case because of him, that need not be true. Yeah? Because there are clearly other things that were in play.
No, I was just giving the example.
Yeah. I'm coming to your larger question. When we say that, of course, I don't know who says this, but when we say that the
Mahmood
board,
Paracha said once.
that the board is the legitimate expression of the Muslim community. So it is Mahmood Paracha's voice. How do you become a legitimate voice within a community? One way is to seek popular consent of the community. Has the board ever done it?
But it has said that they were able to mobilize lakhs of people in Sabano case.
Definitely. So,
and its rally draws a large number of Muslim than any other political parties or any other organizations can do it.
Yes, it does. But
लाखों लाख में लोग आते हैं.
लाखों भाई करोड़ों में लोग आते होंगे और मैं बताऊं कि कैसे लोग आते हैं and what they do to make that happen. उसमें आधे से ज़्यादा तो मदरसे के बच्चे होते हैं, उनको कैसे लाया जाता है अगर मैं बताऊं आपको. There is a big question whether people participate willingly or what kind of strategizing goes there. Now, if you have not sought this consent from the community, आपने कोई election नहीं लड़ा ना. Your body, your members are not elected by the Muslims. Then this claim that it is a legitimate body of the Muslims and representative it's a completely bogus claim. The AIMPLB derives its strength not from the community but from the state. It is a body of traditionalist ulama which has been toppled on the community.
So they were imposed on the community from the top, from the state.
Yes. Because for the state it is very easy to negotiate with the traditional ulama. With the Maulana.
So you are going back to your old thesis. Yes. That a state is more comfortable to negotiate, to go into dialogue, to manage the traditional ulama than critical modernist Muslim.
Exactly. That's what. So if you see the context in which the board gets formed in 1973, I mean it's completely with the support of the state.
But they are saying that a state was intervening.
They can say anything they want to. The state was intervening when?
I think some laws were passed which were negatively in their view.
That was their perception. The board actually came to limelight in the Shabano movement against the Supreme Court judgment, where they mobilized lakhs and lakhs of Muslims, definitely. But why did you mobilize in the first place? उसका सजा तो हम अभी भुगत रहे ना. Who told them to do that? If one old woman is getting an alimony, is this an issue to mobilize the community and march to Delhi to say that you change that law? But
they would say that it was just the beginning. They might have done more and more interventions, and then the community identity would have.
Like what? That is a perception. Na? You can only react on what has happened. भविष्य में ये हो जाएगा, मतलब this kind of a conspiratorial sense, which is found very commonly amongst this class of people.
So you want to say it that it was not a big issue.
It was not a big issue, and you could have justified it from within Islam itself.
Okay.
Arif Muhammad Khan has done it, for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why is it that Muslims all the time want to claim this exclusivity for themselves? Exclusivity.
कि हम बिल्कुल अलग हैं.
If your religious tradition legally discriminates against women, then you better change it. And what is this insistence that because it is religious we cannot change it?
Okay.
Which religion in the world has not changed?
Okay. Yes, sociologically speaking.
Huh? The Muslims are there in Pakistan. Their personal laws are far advanced than us.
Yes.
In Bangladesh.
Yes.
In Egypt.
Yes. And I know it. One of my common friends is from Bangladesh. He was in JNU. And he was basically laughing that in India, how could you have a triple talaq?
Exactly.
Yes.
So within the same tradition, of course, Shias never accepted triple talaq.
Yes. Ahl Hadith also no.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, if the question during Shavana was maintenance, you could have sought an answer from within the religious tradition itself. Now, you cannot take the position that because it is written in our scriptures, and half the thing is not written actually in your scriptures, it is written in secondary and tertiary scriptures.
Yes.
Which needs to be rejected outright because 70% of that is nonsense.
Okay.
Our ulama themselves have called it nonsense.
Yes.
Some of them.
Yes.
So why is it that आप इतना कस के, you see, this is a demand that we will be like this. The whole society beyond us can change if they want to, can become modern. We will live in that society, but we will live according to our own mores.
Yes.
This kind of exclusivity does not work anywhere. There is always a give and take.
Yes.
If modernists, you have to make an effort to harmonize your religious laws with modernist sensibilities. Today, for example, despite the fact that triple talaq is outlawed, and I don't want to get into that politics, because obviously it was a way of the BJP government to punish Muslim men in particular, and it paid electoral dividends for that. But even today, the board, for example, is not debating the point whether Muslim women should have a right to say divorce or not.
Yes.
तलाक देने का हक मुसलमान औरतों को देंगे कि नहीं देंगे आप, ये सवाल है कि नहीं? और आप then you give a very convoluted argument saying she can take khula and all that,
Yes.
knowing 100% the khula is not divorce, that khula is a request for divorce, and there's a big difference between the two.
Yes.
Until the time there is an Islamic Nizam, khula does not make any sense actually. And where every other woman of other religious community has that right in this country, why will Muslim women, I mean, where are you living? Then you clearly take the position that we do not believe in this constitution. You actually say that you believe in this constitution.
Fundamental rights, Article 25 and plus.
This constitution has given us rights to practice our religion.
Yes.
And yet when the constitution is saying कि boss थोड़ा सोचो gender issue पे भी, then you are saying no, you don't want to think about it. अरे ऐसे थोड़ी होता है. So these things need to be debated within the community, you know. And if the personal law board is not going to debate it, then this debate will come from somewhere else.
So they will fish in troubled water.
They will definitely. And they will project a very bad image of Muslims in this
Yes.
country.
They will make monster out of Muslims.
Yes.
Sir, what is the biggest challenge for Muslims community? It is threat from Hindutva forces or dominance of the elites within the community?
Both at their own level are challenges that need to be dealt with. All right. Hindutva, as many people have said, it's not just a threat to Muslims alone. Yeah. So people have argued it is a threat to the constitution. It is a threat to our diversity and pluralism.
Economy
it is a threat
also.
to Dalits, to economy. But I think you are right in one sense that in terms of its sheer viscerality, it is the Muslim body and the Muslim mind, the Muslim psyche, the Muslim emotion that has borne the brunt of Hindutva in this country. Yeah?
So Muslims are at the forefront of facing the attack of Hindutva forces, you are saying.
Definitely.
There is no doubt about it.
There is no doubt about it. There should be no argument about it.
Yes. So Dalits are suffering, OBCs are suffering, upper caste Hindus are suffering, but Muslims are the biggest sufferer.
I'm sorry to say, Dalits are suffering, sections of Dalits are suffering, sections of Dalits are also getting empowered by joining this particular ideology and turning against Muslims.
Yes.
I'm saying a very, very politically incorrect thing.
But it is happening.
But it is happening, and lower OBCs are also doing it. Right? Muslims do not have this choice.
Okay. Against whom will they go?
You understand? So as a body, they have borne the. और जो लोग भी ये बोल रहे हैं कि इधर भी हो गया उधर भी, this kind of ये छलावे की बात है. देश पे अटैक हो रहा है, संविधान पे ये सब छलावे की बात. इस देश में सिर्फ मुसलमानों पे अटैक हो रहा है और आप देख लीजिए वो वाजे है. ठीक है. और ये बात सिर्फ 2014 से शुरू नहीं हुई.
अच्छा.
उसकी जीनियोलॉजी में जाइएगा तो लंबी कहानी.
यस.
ठीक है. तो एक लेवल पे सवाल वो है दैट इफ योर वेरी एग्जिस्टेंस गेट्स क्वेश्चनड, your very being gets questioned by the idea of NRC. Not so much CA, I'm not bothered about that, but NRC definitely. That if you have to give claims that you are a citizen of this country, that is definitely a far bigger threat.
So Hindutva is far bigger threat.
Definitely far. In today's context, definitely. Of course, there are other challenges which are within the community. Like we have been discussing the question of gender rights, the question of democratization of caste, madrasa reforms. These are big issues that needs to be dealt within the community. It needs to be debated within the community. If possible, we need to engage with outside forces also in order to solve these problems. Yeah. But you cannot ask the question which is primary.
Okay.
But if you force me to give an answer, then I'll definitely say, given the current context, Hindutva is the major concern of our times.
Okay. Sir, you have said that a section of marginalized groups, they are also co-opted by the state, and the state is also against large number of people from the marginalized group. They are also facing the music. Now, in Muslim society, I think there are two kinds of opinion. One opinion says that Muslim leadership has lost its weight because even while making triple talaq law, the current regime has not invited the legitimate leaders of the Muslim community. They floated their own groups. So the one argument is that the weight of Muslim leadership, Muslim community, Indian politics is increasingly getting down and down. It's losing. But on the other hand, some people argue that the things are not like that. One set of leadership which was promoted by, let's say, Congress and other secular forces, that they are being replaced by another set of leadership who are more willing to work with or get co-opted by the Hindutva state or Hindutva forces. What is your view?
I don't know from where this idea is coming from that another set of groups are,
Being floated,
or even if they are floated.
No, new group are being called as nationalist Muslim.
Yeah, but I don't see them. Apart from 3-4 names, I actually do not see this new crop of nationalist Muslims.
Okay. So you think that that even among the Hindutva forces, that space is not being given. It is just a claim.
It is just a claim.
Okay. So
even within Muslim Rashtriya Manch, for example, which is the Muslim arm of RSS, there is no denying about that. There are serious issues. Yeah, and Muslim members themselves are not on the same page with the leadership. Yeah, you will not find that MRM leaders, Muslim leaders, you may know one or two of them, have very close relationship with the government. Yeah.
So they're just the mukhota.
They're just the mukhota. And then some modernist intellectuals definitely are trying really hard to get in the good books of the government.
But they're not making.
Yeah. So when the RSS chief recently said that Muslim Hindu DNA एक ही है, the 2-3 newspaper articles you must have seen. Yeah. Saying it's such a good thing and welcoming it and all. And that this is a departure. And RSS has been saying it for a very long time. What is the departure? So this is a function of the elite. Yeah, that whichever party is in power, you would want to get into it. The problem is that with this government, you are not finding that space.
Okay. So then the first argument is more valid, more correct, that they are increasingly, the Muslims community, including leadership, they are losing their voices.
They are losing their voices, but you have to qualify who are these Muslims. When you say Muslim community, it is not a monolith.
Okay.
So if you say that Congress co-opted Ashraf Muslims, it will make more sense.
Okay.
Congress left co-opted upper caste male Muslims, North Indian Muslims, it will make more sense.
Okay.
Yeah, because you have to contextualize these identities.
Okay, no, I agree with you, yes.
So lower caste Muslims never had any voice in this country. Muslim women have never had any voice in this country. Except for some sponsored Muslim women names. You don't see any organic leader which would be there in their parties. Neither are they promoted by these parties. So then, which class has lost political patronage?
Okay, so Ashraf Muslims, male North Indian, they have lost their voice and their weight.
Yes.
Is it correct?
Yes.
Okay. So now I have just got 2 questions and I am going to take them together. What is to account for the rise of Hindutva forces, and where the secular forces, I include left, Dalit Bahujans, minority groups, where they have failed, and what is the way out? The last question. 2 last questions.
But is to account for Hindutva forces.
Hindutva forces rise, and where has the secular forces failed? And when I say secular forces, I mean left forces, left, Dalit Bahujans, particularly those who are non-BJP parties.
Yeah.
And what is the way out?
Social Justice Party.
Social Justice Party, minority groups.
So where does Hindutva derive its strength from?
Yes.
So a lot of people are given a lot of answers.
Your. We are not going to do a survey.
My understanding is that lure of ideology apart, so of course there is a particular allure of belonging to the Hindu nation, and that is a civilizational question. But what percentage of Hindus get moved by that idea, and whether that is large enough to convert it into an electoral victory is a big question. So certainly people are moved by the idea of the Hindu state.
And some people say that only BJP has a vision, BJP has an agenda, BJP can offer something, even if that is perceived that is false. Other parties have no agenda, they are clueless.
At least they have succeeded in projecting it like that.
Yes, yes,
Yeah?
yes.
You see, 90s we inaugurated what was called
Mandal.
the era of political empowerment.
Okay.
Yeah?
Mandal era.
Yeah? So you had Lalu, you had Mulayam, and they did good things in terms of the mandate that they had, empowering
Lower
low
caste.
caste people. So across low caste they made alliances, Muslims, and they came to power. The victory of Hindutva and the failure of social justice parties has happened simultaneously.
The
in
victory
many.
of Hindutva and the failure of Social Justice Party,
Yes.
they happened at the same time.
Because if I ask you the question, who is championing social justice today in UP?
Very difficult.
It is BJP. It is not the Social Justice Party. The BJP in UP inaugurated the second phase of Mandal. The first phase of
So
Mandal
you are saying that second phase of Mandal inaugurated by BJP means that they are able to co-opt a large number of people from diverse castes. They are able to give something.
basically the non-dominant OBCs.
Okay.
So the first phase empowered the dominant OBCs, say the Yadavs.
Yes.
Yeah. Now it was incumbent on the social justice parties because caste democratization is an ongoing process. You have to include all other castes who have been left out by this march of caste empowerment. Instead of that happening, social justice went into families. Families became champions of social justice. This was not the idea. Yeah? And I don't want parties like Samajwadi led by a scion of, son of Mulayam Singh Yadav, who has no understanding of what social justice is all about. He is the real reason why this politics failed. Ultimately, lower OBCs got co-opted by the BJP because they offered a better alternative. So I am not so much into the allure of the Hindu nation state, the way they are projecting it. But if you look at the nitty-gritties and caste arithmetic and what coalition of castes the BJP has made for itself,
Okay.
then you understand कि boss social justice की politics तो BJP कर रही है.
Okay. So you want to say that the failure of the Social Justice Party has provided an opportunity, a ground for the Hindutva forces to come, co-opt them, and they are successful in doing it.
Exactly. And then there are other things that happened.
Okay.
Social justice is not about coming to power.
Okay.
It is also an ideological battle, no?
Okay. But they are saying that when we,
What did you do about that? So I will give you the example of Kanshiram.
But some people are saying that if we get power first, then other things will follow.
Yeah. So you got power, then what did you do? Kanshiram did all this simultaneously. He was politically mobilizing, but he was also, the local BSP offices were also centers of writing alternative history. So he was engaged in the cultural question also.
But apologists will say that now the dominant structure is Brahmanism. Even if you make some changes in Uttar Pradesh or any other state, they are not allowing you to do something.
No, but before that Mayawati demolished that structure. No, why are you not saying that? She did not go on the idea of Kanshiram, no. All these things stopped. First phase you had Periyar Mela in UP. After that, what happened?
Yes.
After that, she started co-opting Brahmins, and the whole logic of coming to power is to inaugurate an anti-caste politics. No, not to do caste politics.
Yes, anti-caste politics.
What happened to that?
Samrasta.
What happened to that idea?
Now they're talking about Samrasta, and then Bahujan Samaj is
No, so that is not.
well-wisher of the Brahmin Samaj.
That is not going to work.
That is not going to. So what is the way
You
out?
have to lead an ideological battle. The way out is that all these parties. I do not expect anything from them.
Okay.
ठीक है? If today, forget about social justice part, if Congress has been a partly communal, partly secular, whatever party right from the very beginning, Congress won elections when it was communal and started losing elections after, Sonia came and the whole character changed, but I'm not going into that. If Priyanka Gandhi tweets कि हमारे पिताजी का स्वप्न
था, it was the dream of my father that Ram temple should be built.
Yeah.
Yes. And they also sent, the Congress leaders were also competing with the BJP to send bricks made of gold and silver.
So what choice do I have? As a Muslim in this country, what choice do I have?
Very dark and gloomy picture, sir, we have.
Yeah. So what should be done? I really don't have answers. But if you ask me whether you'll go with Congress, whether you'll go with SPN, for me they are all the same. What did Samajwadi Party do in Muzaffarnagar? It's a question that haunts every Muslim. Okay, they might win, they might get Muslim votes, but it's a very tactical kind of an arrangement. Yeah. So what is the way out? There has to be a new grammar of politics. There has to be new forces, new alignments.
Okay.
I have no idea from where they will come. But these royal houses of Yadavs in Bihar and UP, yeah, and it's all royal houses only, Baba. Jagan Mohan Reddy is so even down there you have a problem. Pawar, there is a family.
They are all non-Brahmins.
Mamta is now promoting the niece or nephew.
So basically,
how do you fight a party?
yes. So basically, your argument is that underscoring the fact that the Hindutva forces is the biggest challenge, the secular forces are somehow imitating or making the same mistakes, and they have no answer, no clue.
They have no clue because they are so overwhelmed by their own self-interest and the interest of the family, which they are projecting as a political interest. And that's definitely not true.
But you have to give me some hope also.
No, I'm sorry, but I am not very hopeful.
But we generally say that it should be the alliance between the oppressed community.
Nana, what is the oppressed community, Baba?
Dalit, Bahujan, non-Brahmins, Muslims, minority, religious minority, gay, lesbian, other religious minority, people suffering in different regions.
कर लीजिए, कौन रोक रहा है? हो नहीं रहा है ना?
नहीं हो तो नहीं रहा.
क्योंकि सामाजिक संरचना बिल्कुल बरक्स है आपके. आप हवा में महल बनाने से क्या होगा? What is this? Suppose you ask the question of Dalit Muslim unity. Why should there be unity, Baba? Have the Muslims decaste themselves? You go to Western UP, now they have lost political power and their closeness to political power. When the SP government was in power, you talk to a Muslim there and see what they have to talk about Dalits. How disparaging and what not. ये यूनिटी आपके किताबों से नहीं आएगी ना, क्योंकि आपने अपनी बुद्धिमत्ता में लिख दिया है कि दलित मुस्लिम यूनिटी होना चाहिए, तो हो जाएगा. समाज में भी दिखना चाहिए ना। तो like sections of Hindus have never considered Dalits as human beings, sections of Muslims also have not considered them as human beings. तो दलित मुस्लिम यूनिटी कहाँ से होगा? दलित पासमानदा यूनिटी हो सकता है, दलित यूनिटी हो सकता है, दलित मुस्लिम यूनिटी कहाँ से हो जाएगा?
Okay, because one is a caste identity, another is a religious identity. Yes.
And at places Muslims have been the oppressors. उनके पास भी जमीनें थी ना भाई, सिर्फ राजपूतों के पास थोड़ी जमीनें थी. So how did they treat the Bahujans and Dalits?
So
Muslims only made private armies, no, in Bihar, not just Bhumihars, but Muslims also made private armies, no.
Yes.
Everybody knows that.
yes, yes.
So then, if it is Abhay Kumar's wish that all oppressed communities should come together, it is not going to happen. No?
So you want to say that the larger the real questions are not being taken up by the secular forces, because as you have said that when I was asking Professor Arshad Alam to give interview, he said that यार मैं बहुत ही politically incorrect हूँ, will you take my interview? I said कि okay, let me try. Sir, thank you very much. I think for 1 hour we have discussed so many important issues, and particularly our focus has been uniform civil code, identity of the Muslims community, and also the political scenario was also taken up. Professor Arshad Alam has taught at Jawaharlal Nehru University, Department of Sociology. He has also taught at Jamia Millia Islamia. His books and articles are well cited. Thank you very much, friends, that you have participated. And sir, next time I will again ask you for your opinion, politically incorrect opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much for bearing with me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.